Our next news update, 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, as we've been talking about the various confirmation hearings underway this week. A couple of stick out, ones that you expected would. We talked quite a bit about Pete Hegseth's. But on one of the particular cultural matters of the day, with the administration change coming on Monday, Pam Bondi's turned out to be quite chippy, and I enjoyed her feistiness, and really important on the topic of lawfare. Of course, this is something that Trump and others in MAGA world were subjected to over the last 4 years. And the exchanges between Sheldon Whites Only and some of the other senators, Adam Schiff, of course, very concerned that there's some sort of enemies list that Pam Bondi will be working off of to exact vengeance for Trump. And, projected questions like, are you going to prosecute journalists and so forth? So the typical sort of all the things we've done, we certainly hope you won't do to us. All the things we've done to you, please don't do to us, because that would, run afoul of our democracy and so on and so forth. Well, a person who's had a front row seat to lawfare, experienced quite a bit himself, I would argue, is John Eastman. He's former constitutional law professor and dean at Chapman University Fowler School of Law, also the founding director of the Claremont Institute's Center for Constitutional Jurisprudence. He has a new documentary entitled The Eastman Dilemma, Lawfare or Justice. We're pleased to have him join us now. John Eastman, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Dan and Amy, thanks for having me on your show. And hello, Chicago. I went to law school there at the University of Chicago down on the South Side.
Have they erased you from their history too, like everybody else has tried to do?
Yeah, well, I'm not getting any awards, but hopefully the tide will turn.
You were indicted in Georgia, indicted in Arizona. I know you had disbarred in California, if I'm remembering correctly. So what is the status of all of your legal or professional travails?
Yeah, not quite disbarred in California yet, only recommended for disbarment, and it has to go up through 2 layers of appeal courts before the California Supreme Court can make the ultimate decision. And we hope they'll make the right decision and follow the law and get rid of this nonsense. Yeah, and I was also unindicted co-conspirator in the unconstitutional Jack Smith indictment against President Trump in Washington, D.C. that has since been dismissed. The bar trial alone was probably the most expensive and longest in California bar history. All told, I've been subject to 18 different actions, totaling more than $1.6 million and counting, for recommending that, for bringing cases challenging illegality in the conduct of the 2020 election, representing President Trump before the Supreme Court, and developing, well-grounded constitutional strategies to address the illegality and try and expose what was going on. So that's the definition of lawfare. You go after your political opponents. You stretch laws, distort old mob statutes to cover ordinary political disputes, and then try and drain people's finances and reputations, so that other folks won't dare step up against this stuff again.
So $1.6 million is what you've spent in legal fees so far. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, $1.6 million in legal fees so far, and if Georgia and Arizona go forward, we anticipate at least $1 million more each in those. And those prosecutors aren't backing down. They did not get the message from the 2024 election that the American people resoundingly rejected this nonsense lawfare. And I'm glad you brought up Adam Schiff, because this is probably the greatest psychological projection example in history. They're claiming that Trump will politicize the Department of Justice and the FBI,
right,
when it has been so grossly politicized, egregiously politicized over the last 4 years. I don't know if they're just that naive, or they're just that dishonest, or with Schiff it's probably dishonest. I mean, the guy's a serial liar. But this is really stunning, and holding people accountable for what I view as a nationwide conspiracy to deprive folks of their constitutional rights to speech, the right to petition the government for redress of grievances, Fourth Amendment rights against generalized warrants. Sixth Amendment rights to attorney-client privilege and those things. I think the people that engaged in that egregious violations of the law need to be held accountable. That's not vengeance. It's not retribution. It's justice and holding people accountable for their illegal conduct.
And your alleged crimes, do they largely revolve around the legal arguments you made to Vice President Pence, the legal arguments you made in favor of alternative elector slates in places like Georgia and Arizona? Is that right?
Yes, and I had very little to do with the electors issue, other than saying it's critical they meet on the designated day, because the one authority Congress has in this whole process is to set the date for electors to meet and vote, and the Constitution requires that they meet and vote on the same day throughout the country. And so if there were pending challenges and they didn't meet and vote, and Trump ends up winning those challenges, the electoral votes probably can't be counted. So that was it. I said it's important to meet on that day, and for that, I'm subject to a mob RICO crime and indictment in Georgia, racketeering enterprise. Seriously, a conspiracy to commit forgery. I mean, nobody forged anything in Arizona. They signed their own names to it. This was not hidden. It was clearly contingent on the pending litigation. But this is the way they do it. They distort the statute. There's another one that a lot of the J6ers were charged with. The Supreme Court finally struck down last June. But it was, again, a mob witness intimidation statute with a 20-year felony penalty. And then after Enron, they added, or you destroy all your documents to avoid criminal prosecution, or otherwise try and obstruct a proceeding. Well, they took that otherwise clause and said, well, anybody that's protesting at the Capitol, that's a 20-year felony.
Right.
Now, I'm waiting to see if the protesters at Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing get charged with a 20-year felony.
They were taken out by
Yeah.
force.
Well, and
they were taken out, but I'll bet released without putting jail time, unlike the J6ers.
Well, that's right.
Good
I mean,
point.
you're referencing that. I mean, the ridiculous bastardization of that Sarbanes-Oxley law for the purposes of persecuting J6ers and others, interrupting an official proceeding. The interesting thing about your case too is even people who are detractors. It's John Eastman gave bad legal advice. It's a good thing Vice President Pence didn't listen to it, or that they shouldn't have pursued alternative electors. They detractors will still say, well, but that's just bad legal advice is not criminal if I think the legal advice is bad. And also, I mean, you weren't in no position to impose what you thought should be done. You're offering legal counsel to actors who do have the power to make that choice or an alternative one. So, I mean, that's where this whole thing is completely off the rails, un-American. The idea that even if you disagree with the legal advice, that disagreement turns into something that is criminally prosecutable. I mean, what a standard that sets.
Well, no, and to put it in the language of the First Amendment, I was petitioning Mike Pence, the decision maker, for redress of grievances. Petitioning the government for redress of grievances is an explicitly protected constitutional right in the First Amendment. And there were other presidents in our history, 6 or 7 times, when they have resolved on their own disputes over electoral votes. Mm-hmm. So they can say that, well, there was no basis for exercising that power here. You were wrong on the facts. or they can say you're wrong on the law, even though it's an open constitutional question, and even though there's historical precedent for it, we disagree with your interpretation. But you're absolutely right. The notion that that's not just criminal, but felony criminal with 20-year felony sentences stacked on. In Georgia, I'm subject to 9 different counts. A couple of them have been dismissed now, but I think the total was 45 years. I'm near retirement age. I mean, that's until I'm 100. They want to put you in prison. This is an abuse of our criminal justice system, the likes of which we've never seen, and it's a Soviet tactic. The famous head of Stalin's secret police, Lavrentiy Beria, said famously, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. They have identified Trump and the people that supported Trump that they don't like and they want to go after, and then they have scoured the law books to see if there's something that can be distorted to cover that conduct so that we can bring criminal charges against these guys. And even if we fail, we will bankrupt them in the process. And more importantly, send a message to any other lawyer, any other supporter of Trump: don't you dare challenge the government's narrative or we will destroy you. And that's what's going on. And it is an abuse of the criminal justice system that I think the people that are doing it have to be held to account.
Is there anything Trump can do to help you once he becomes president on Monday officially?
Well, the federal case against him was dismissed, and I was unindicted co-conspirator alleged in that one. And so that's gone. But as far as, issuing pardons or stopping the state court proceedings, he really has no authority. However, the Department of Justice, if I'm right about this, is a nationwide conspiracy to deprive people of their civil rights, and there's collusion. We know there's collusion between nonprofit groups. The Arizona Attorney General, for example, hired a group called States United Democracy Center to prepare the prosecution memo. Now, they are a violently anti-Trump partisan organization. They're the ones that filed the bar complaint against me in California. The AG hiring them to do the prosecution strategy is kind of like hiring a fox to prepare your safety plan for your chicken coop. I mean, it's insane. And so the nationwide conspiracy to deprive people of civil rights is a federal felony. And I think the Department of Justice should and likely will investigate that, and if warranted, bring indictments.
Well, there's another nexus, too, on that score, which is the Colangelo, the guy that was dispatched from Justice to go up and advise Alvin Bragg on the prosecution of the Trump case in Manhattan. So, to your point, in terms of legitimate basis for investigation.
And the DA's lover down in Georgia, spent a day in the White House counsel's office. Right. He says, "Oh, we didn't talk about the Georgia case," but he billed the Georgia case for that time. So either he's submitting false bills or he's lying about what the meeting was about. So, yeah, there's lots of stuff like this that, if fully investigated, actually yield what I believe will be found. Then people ought to be criminally prosecuted, because this abuse of the criminal justice system to target political opponents is unheard of in our nation's history. It's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and people really need to be held accountable.
John Eastman, former con law professor and dean, Chapman University Fowler School of Law, founding director of the Claremont Institute Center for Constitutional Jurisprudence as well. His new documentary, The Eastman Dilemma, Lawfare or Justice. John Eastman, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and people, if they're interested, can watch it for free for right now at MadisonMediaFund.org, and I hope everybody will take a look at it.
Tell us again the website.
MadisonMediaFund.org.
Okay, MadisonMediaFund.org for the Eastman Dilemma documentary. John Eastman, thanks again for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Family life is a crazy adventure filled